2 days later, on a hot Sunday afternoon, Ben leads Ryan and Jenny down the path from the house. They're all carrying supplies for the expedition, and Jenny's got her camera slung around her neck. Ryan drops the plastic containers he's carrying, and they skitter across the trail. Ben and Jenny can help him pick him up. "It's good your body parts are attached," Jenny says, "or you'd lose them, too." Ryan laughs. "Like you never lose anything. You're so perfect." Jenny smiles. Ben slows down to check his pocket. Did he forget the list of things to search for at the vernal pool? No, it's still there, along with the pictures he printed from the internet. Eggs from fairy shrimp, caddies fly cases, snail shells, fingernail clams. Nothing they're looking for is longer than 2 inches, but Ben hopes he can find some specimens to show what lives in the vernal pool. He wants to show everything he can in his report. When they get to the side of the pool, Ben stops. "Here it is." Ryan and Jenny stare at the mud-encrusted leaves strewn the ground. "I don't see any pool," says Ryan. "I told you, that's what a vernal pool does. It dries up." "But there's nothing left to find," Ryan says. "There's got to be something. Help me look. And Jenny, will you take some pictures of the area?" Ben steps carefully out to the middle of the darkened leaves where the pool was and squats down. Ryan starts shoving leaves and dirt aside. "I don't see anything," he yells. "Hey," Ben yells, "you've got to be more careful. We don't want to mess everything up." While Jenny snaps pictures, Ryan and Ben work quietly and methodically, sifting through the mud. First Ben finds a caddie's fly casing. Then Ryan shouts, "Hey, look, a little clamshell. There's another one, too." "I know," Ben says. "It's like there's nothing there, but then you look closely and bam! A whole different world opens up." Within 15 minutes, they fill a couple of containers with snails, clams, and caddie's fly shells. "Too bad we can't get a spadefoot," says Ryan. "They're around here somewhere," says Ben, "but they're impossible to find." Just then, something moves in the leaves by his feet. He bends over and pushes the leaves aside. Ben gently places his hand over the creature and picks it up. "Is it a spadefoot?" Ryan asks. "No," says Ben. "It's a wood frog. Remember the one I brought into school? They use vernal pools, too." He opens his hand carefully. "Look at it." The 3 of them peer down at its tan, smooth skin and the dark mask around its eyes. "It's cool," Ryan says. Ben looks at the frog. Then he looks at Jenny and Ryan. An idea comes to his head. A great idea. "You guys, go sit on that rock over there," Ben says, pointing to the boulder by the side of the pool. "How come?" Ryan asks. "Just do it, please." Jenny shakes her head, but she follows Ryan to the rock and clambers up beside him. Jenny, can I use your camera?" Ben asks. He takes the camera from her neck and puts a strap around Jenny. "One more thing," he says, handing the frog to Jenny. "You have to hold this. Hold it up so I can see it." "What? No way! What if it poops on me?" "Consider yourself blessed. Just take it. I'll hurry." They're laughing as Ben focuses the camera on them. "Okay," he says. "Jenny, hold the frog a little higher. Both of you guys smile." "Ribbit," Ryan says. "Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit." Ben clicks the picture. Ben works like crazy on the report. For the next 5 days, it's all he thinks about. The best part about a report is what it feels like when it's finished. It's like Ben hasn't taken a deep breath for weeks, and suddenly his lungs are filled with fresh air. Or he's taken off a pair of really dark sunglasses and can finally see clearly again. And when he's finished, he knows it's good. He hopes it's just good enough. It's raining, but by the time Ben finds the street he's looking for, it has started to pour. He's drenched, but his report is inside his jacket, safely tucked into a plastic bag. He pedals his bike slowly so he can see the street numbers. Then, he recognizes the car in one of the driveways. Ben parks his bike on the sidewalk, walks to the door, and knocks. Nobody answers, so he knocks again. He's about to give up when the door opens. Tabitha Turner stands there, looking surprised. "Yes?" "Hello, Mrs. Turner. I'm Ben Maroney." Drops of rain trickle from his hair and slide down his nose. He wipes his face with the sleeve of his jacket. "I met you at Mrs. Tibbetts' house." "I know who you are." "I'm really sorry to bother you, but I've got something I want to show you. It's my report for geography." She raises one eyebrow. "Geography?" "Yes, ma'am, geography. It'll just take a minute, please." Tabitha Turner looks back into the house like she's trying to figure out a way to escape. But she steps to the side and motions for Ben to come in. "You can hang your wet jacket on that coat rack," she tells him, "and maybe you'd better leave your shoes by the door." Ben does as he's told and follows Mrs. Turner into a large living room. She sits straight backed in the chair by the window. Ben checks the seat of his jeans to make sure it isn't wet, then perches on the edge of the couch. With his heart pounding, he slides his report out of the plastic bag and places it on the coffee table. I wanted to show you my report on ecosystems, he says, scooting it over so she can see it. She glances down at the report, then looks at him blankly, like she's still trying to figure out what he's talking about. I was going to do it on the desert because that's where I lived until 4 months ago. I really loved it there. There was all this great museum near my house, and I had all this stuff about deserts. I even had a lizard. Its name was Lenny, but I didn't get to bring it with me when I moved. My friend Toby was keeping it, and it died. Miss Turner nods, waiting to hear what this is all about. But when I started my desert report, I didn't feel like doing it anymore. Ben is halfway afraid to go on, but there's nothing to do but just plow ahead. So instead, I decided to do it about what it's like where I live now. He takes a deep breath and lets it out. I decided to do it about your land and about your vernal pool. Tabitha Turner clears her throat and shifts uncomfortably in her chair as if she's about to speak, but Ben doesn't give her a chance to interrupt. He opens his report and holds it out to her. I know you don't have time to read all this, but here I talk about how the pool has been there a really long time, probably for 10,000 years, and about the people who have lived there. The Wampanoag Indians walked through there maybe 1,000 years ago. They were the ones who met the Pilgrims. Ben thumbs through it until he finds the photos. See, here are some of the animals that live in the vernal pool. These are salamanders, spotted ones, I'm pretty sure. We didn't find any in your pool, but they live around there. And look at these caddisfly larvae. They make these little buildings out of the sticks. He holds the booklet up so she can see the little clamshells he taped to the sheet. I found these at the pool site, and I figured they were fairy shrimp too, but I couldn't find any. I know spadefoots were there earlier this spring, but they're all spread out now. Still, me and my friends did find something interesting. Ben flips to the last page where he's taped the picture of Ryan and Jenny sitting on the big rock by the dried up pool. They're both laughing, and Jenny's nose is scrunched up. She's holding the wood frog away from her because she's afraid it's going to poop on her. Ben has barely looked at Mrs. Turner the whole time, but now he sneaks a glance. She's studying the picture of Ryan and Jenny. This is the barest hint of a smile on her face. He wonders if she knows. He's about to find out. He barrels ahead with what he's been planning to say. What would happen here is more important than any grade he's going to get in geography. And I put that picture at the end of the report because of the picture I put in front of it. Ben flips back to the first page of the report and holds it up for Tabitha Turner to see. The picture is old and crinkled on the edges. It shows 2 kids sitting on a rock holding toads. The girl's holding a fat toad under her chin and laughing. Tabitha Turner's breath catches. Ben looks up at her and sees her hand go to her mouth, but he's not done. Let me read the first page, he says. Ben reads aloud over the sound of his heart pounding in his chest. There is another habitat close to me that I just discovered. It's like another planet. Even though it's small, it holds 1,000 things. And once there were these 2 kids who lived near it. They were brother and sister. They made up a funny story about a giant spirit that looked after the land. They called this creature the Overtoad. This is the story of the land and the water that the Overtoad protects. It has protected it for thousands of years, and I hope it protects it for thousands more. My report is about a vernal pool in Edenborough, Massachusetts. Ben watches Tabitha Turner take her hand from her mouth and reaches out for the report. He hands it to her. After staring at the picture for a moment, she looks at the ceiling like she's trying to see right through the sky, then closes the report. She opens it again and leafs through the booklet page by page. When she gets to the picture of Ryan and Jenny, she stares at it, then flips back to the picture of her and her brother. Mrs. Turner, Ben pleads, please don't let them put up the houses where the toads are. I know it's your land, but please don't do it. Mrs. Tippett doesn't want you to do it either, but she thinks that you're mad at her. I know you don't get along. She says you won't listen to her. Tabitha Turner gives him a sad smile. I know what my sister-in-law thinks, she says. She pauses for a moment when she asks, does she know that you're doing this? Ben shakes his head. She thinks it's too late. I was hoping you might sell it to somebody who won't put houses on it, but she said you won't change your mind. He looks at Tabitha Turner. Her face shows nothing. Suddenly, Ben is exhausted. He should have never done this. Mrs. Tippett was right. Mrs. Turner stands, the report still in her hands. I'll need that back, Ben said. What will you do with the picture? She asked, handing him the booklet. I'll give it back to Mrs. Tippett. If it's all right, I'd like it, Mrs. Tabitha Turner says. Okay, Ben says. When I get the report back, I'll ask her if I can give it to you. Actually, she adds, I'd like both of them. The other one, too. Sure, Ben says. Okay. Mrs. Turner leads him to the front door and opens it. Thank you for coming by, Ben, she says. Okay, Ben says. If you want, you don't need to say anything more, she says. Thanks for coming by. Ben climbs on his bike for the long ride home. When he looks back, Mrs. Turner is standing beside the storm door watching him. He feels empty. It's all up to the overtoad now. The next day, when Ben sets his terrarium and his report on the big table in the back of the classroom, a bunch of kids gather around. What's in there? Someone asks. Wetland plants, Ben says. Any snakes? Danny Martin asks. Ben shakes his head. Toads? Someone else asks. Frogs? There's an American toad in there, Ben says. I can't see it, Danny says. It's camouflage, Ben says. It doesn't want you to see it. Let's take it out, another kid says. I think we should leave it alone, Ben says. It's already freaked out about where it is. I'm going to take it back to the woods tomorrow. Why don't you keep it? Tommy Miller asks. I don't feel like it, says Ben. His classmates try to find the toad in the terrarium, but lose interest after a while and drift back to their desks. That's when Ben notices Jenny leafing through his report. Geez, Ben, this is really long, she says. I know, Ben says. I kind of got carried away. Ryan appears at Jenny's side. Let me see, he says, and grabs for it. Whoa, it's like 1,000,000 pages. 15, actually, Jenny says. Almost 1,000,000, Ryan says, flipping the pages. Don't mess it up, says Ben, or I'll feed you to the overtoad. As he says that, Mrs. Cutcher comes up from behind Ben. Did you bring this in, Ben? She says, looking down at the terrarium. Yeah, he says, it's part of my report. He takes the report out of Ryan's hands and gives it to Mrs. Cutcher. She thumbs through it, and a huge smile spreads across her face. Great work, Ben. Great work. Ben grins. It is great work, and he knows it.